Okay, 2022 was quite a year, especially in terms of reality television. And I think for a lot of us, reality TV in 2022 sometimes became triggering TV, if you know what I'm saying. There were instances of things that happened in the reality landscape that literally, honestly, almost sent a lot of us over the edge. So much so that I've even had to take a little break from it for the holidays. But I couldn't let this time go by without doing a deep reflection on the top stories and scandals from the reality TV shows that we watch on this channel and that we discuss on this channel. And so I thought I would take the time to actually review those now. Now, I've definitely taken some time in consideration to really think about these stories, but I also want you guys to know that I may have missed something. There may have been something that you feel like should go onto the list. And if you have an example, please feel free to leave it in the comment section down below. But with that being said, let's go ahead and stage dive in. Now, I do also want to note that these will be in no particular order. And I also have some dishonorable mentions as well. So stay tuned to the end of the video for those. All right, so let's start things off with the Kathy Hilton meltdown. Okay, now the Kathy Hilton meltdown really blew up at the beginning of this year. And we knew that Real Housewives of Beverly Hills was filming. There was some talk about whether or not Kathy Hilton would indeed return. And then we finally heard that she did return, and it was like halfway through the season, and that things weren't necessarily going the same way as they were last year. We heard that things were not hunky-dory, okay? And then the Aspen trip occurs and information begins to leak out about an alleged Kathy Hilton meltdown, which we know to be somewhat true at this point. And then the games began with Lisa Rinna, making her comments on social media, information leaking out. There were all types of accusations and, allegations of slurs and that sort of thing. And this whole thing became one ramped up version of the Denise and Brandy situation that had occurred the year before. Beverly Hills has become known for this, sort of scandal that begins when filming is happening and we begin to get bits and pieces of it as time goes on during the filming process. So much so that by the time we actually see it, it really usually fizzles and it doesn't usually mean as much. And so for as much fanfare as this caused, and for as much as Lisa Rinna was, making social media posts and going back and forth with people, we even got a person out of the woodworks claiming to be involved in this, going back and forth with some of the ladies on the show. I mean, by the time we got to the viewing of this on the show, I think we were all a little bit more exhausted from it than we were intrigued by it. Because ultimately, what this boiled down to was Kathy Hilton's word against Lisa Rinna's word. And at the end of the day, because of the season that Lisa Rinna had, a lot of viewers were much more inclined to side with Kathy Hilton, even though they might have believed that she did indeed have a meltdown. And I think it just kind of goes to show that overhyped stories and overhyped storylines, they don't always play out as well when we actually finally get to see them, because a lot of times things can get so blown up online that by the time we see the nuances of what actually happened, it can kind of leave us all scratching our heads. And I feel like that's how most of us felt by the end of the season. So to me, this was one of the things that literally it drove social media with regards to Beverly Hills before the season started and then right at the end of the season. And it's interesting. As I reflect back on it, I think about this idea of, was it much ado about nothing? I'll leave that up to you guys to determine that. All right, so our next story that I feel like it's not a scandal, but it definitely broke the internet. And that is Sheree and Martel, okay? Sheree and Martel dating. Y'all, I remember when the photos first popped up of Sheree and Martel. I don't know if it was on TMZ. I cannot remember what it was. But what I do know is, when I say I felt like these photos have been staged and posed for the gods, I did. I mean, even today, I feel like those photos feel staged AF to me. But I have to digress, because the news about this took social media and the internet by storm. I mean, it was everywhere. Everyone wanted to know what was going on. Were they official? Was this real? And it literally had a lot of us scratching our heads, but also at the same time going, I could sort of see this. I could sort of see this. You had interviewers asking Melody about it, and she, for her part was like, I don't really know about this situation. Much love and success to the both of them. But it's just fascinating because for the first time, I think in I don't want to say reality TV show history, because I'm sure it may have happened before, but to see two major stars on two shows on two different networks that are both successful in their own right, to see these two individuals get together, it just screams crossover. So honestly, like, you gotta think to yourself, like, okay, I mean, like, this is huge right here. It's huge because there's also the scandal of it all. Like, is this real? That's the crazy thing. And then we got word that Martel ended up filming for the new season of Real Housewives of Atlanta. We're wondering if we're going to see Sheree on Love and Marriage Huntsville's next season. There's a lot to process here, okay? Now, I want to also go into our third major story with Martel in mind, okay? And that, to me, in my opinion, one of the biggest things, and it kind of reminds me of the Kathy Hilton thing, was the Madani brawl on Love and Marriage Huntsville. Now, season 4 of Love and Marriage Huntsville was filming at the time, okay? It was actually airing, I should say. And the back half of the season, whether they call it season 4B or season 5, it's up for debate. Whatever the case may be, season 4 was airing, all right? And it was lit. And we slowly start to get this word on the night of one of the episodes airing that there had been a brawl down to the Madani, okay? Now, for those of you guys who don't know, Madani is actually Destiny's store, okay? It's a beauty supply store. And we had seen social media posts from Melody going live at the event. We had heard from Stormy and her mom. We heard from Miss Wanda. I mean, it was everywhere that there had been an all-cast brawl down at the Madani involving not only Melody Holt, but Miss Wanda, Martel, Marceau, Letitia, Maurice. Security had to escort people away. The day it went down, I mean, we were all shook because there was an episode of Love and Marriage Huntsville set to air. And I'm like, I don't even know if I should be paying attention to the social media because more and more information was leaking out, or if I should be paying more attention to the show that's going to be airing tonight because the season was lit, okay? So to me, I actually almost feel like hearing about it was more impactful than seeing it, But I need you guys to let me know what you think. There were a lot of you guys who felt like it was too much for TV. How do you come back from this? You know, should people be fired from the show? There were, people were really up in arms about Miss Wanda. And, I don't know. I can't ascertain personally whether or not seeing it play out was more effective than hearing about it. But I will say there is something that is to be said about what your imagination pictures than what you actually see on the screen. What I also can say, though, is this. Despite what we heard, the fight scene itself, the episode, was a lot more nuanced than what we had even begun to even suspect when we heard about the fight. So actually seeing the events leading up to it, it helped really tell the tale of why the fight broke out in the beginning, because the energy was already so kinetic that you honestly, by the time we got to the actual brawl, it honestly made sense to me that things blew up the way that they did, because the energy was already ripe for conflict. So that's my number 3. My number 4, we're still going to stay on the Sheree train, because we cannot talk about this list without talking about the She by Sheree fashion launch. Now, again, this was another one of those storylines that we had heard prior to the season airing. We had heard Sheree finally pulled it off. She by Sheree, the fashion show had occurred. The filming had occurred. We had seen photos from the event, but nothing of the actual fashions. So we heard about that before the season ended filming. So for many of us viewers, by the time the fashion show aired and we got to see the fashions themselves, many of us were so excited and we had our credit cards ready to hit the buy button once the episode finished airing, only to go to the She by Sheree and not see any of those fashions that we had seen on the show. How, Sway? How? How is it that within all these months, we still don't have the fashions for She by Sheree other than the merch? Okay? There's a difference between, in my opinion, fashions, okay, from a fashion show and your merch line. This feels more like a merch line to me. What we finally got, there were the Shein comparisons, and again, we don't knock the Shein. We don't knock, getting your products from, other countries, because a lot of companies do this. But it is really that the expectation we had was not met based on what we saw in the episode and what we had been hearing. And it just felt like Sheree has done it again. How is it that you have managed to botch the grand opening of She by Sheree, a brand that is probably more well known than many of the Housewives brands, because it has been in existence in our minds for so many years? How do you mess this up? Only Sheree could botch this fashion show and still make headlines with her new man, Martel. Okay? So our number 5 story on this list is something that honestly I had no idea was coming. And it was really more of an effect of what we saw on the show than it was anything else, because the bot attack against Garcelle's son, Jax, makes our number 5 story / scandal of 2022. I just felt like this was so crazy. It came after us seeing Erica Jane curse at Garcelle's 14-year-old son, Jax. And then Diana Jenkins, the new cast member from Real Housewives of Beverly Hills, taking jabs at Garcelle on social media. And fans were in an uproar about this episode and took it to the streets. Now, in defense of Diana, there were posts made on Jax's page that were just horrendous. And looking back on it, I mean, it just seems so crazy to me that things went so far. And this is one of those instances where, I mean, that some of these things that we experienced with regards to the shows and these stories were so triggering, because this was one of those incidents, because it's somebody's 14-year-old son on a show, on a reality TV show, being attacked viciously on social media. I don't know. This was something I was not expecting. I was not anticipating. It was not on my mood board. But here we are talking about it, and it literally was a thing where Bravo had to address it. You know, cast members had to address it. There was all of these investigations that were going on, and there was even allegedly that Diana had found a location, or whomever they thought had actually sent out the bots. But we, the public, have never gotten any word on who that is from either investigation. So I would like some follow-up on that, please. All right, so those are our top 5. I want to give three dishonorable mentions. Jen Shaw pleading guilty. I mean, listen, I feel like that was a hit it and quit it, because there were many of us who already felt like that guilty plea was coming, or that she might have been already guilty in our own minds. So to me, this was not necessarily surprising, but it was definitely a big story. Another big story coming out of Salt Lake City was the Jenny Nguyen racist tweets and Facebook posts. Honestly, I don't even care to mention this, but I do mention it because I think what it does is it shows the power that we as viewers have. We all rallied together to make such a fuss about this that the network ultimately had to take a stance, had to make a statement, and ultimately, again, also had to fire this woman, because we didn't want to be, yet again, like I said, triggered by what we are supposed to be viewing as entertainment. She can go. And so, again, the only reason I make mention of this has been person on our reality TV show screens is because I wanted to show the power of what we can do when we all stand together and we stand against something like that. The final dishonorable mention is going to be the fallout surrounding the Mia and Wendy altercation on the Real Housewives of Potomac. And by fallout, I mean, there's in my mind, I've seen people throw liquids at each other on Housewives. I've seen, wig pulls, ponytail pulls. I've now seen a purse popping. But I think there's also something to be said for the way that the cast reacts to something like that. Because ultimately, what we saw was, Robin recording the altercation, but only when Wendy is, retaliating with her words and, telling her to either fight or don't fight. And Giselle's really laid back approach to the whole thing, when 2 seasons ago, she was the morality police regarding any type of behavior that was less than savory, because she has a reputation to uphold. It just felt to me very hypocritical, and it felt very triggering for a lot of us viewers. And again, it's not something that we want to see on our screens. And I hate that we even had to see it like that. So that makes the third dishonorable mention on our list. If there was a story that you think that I missed that should be included in this, let a brother know down in the comment section down below. And with that being said, I will catch you in the next video.